All right, we're here. We are again, chapter 12, Ulysses. Um, well, anyway, we're this chapter is a little bit like the last chapter. It's a little bit like a parody. It's narrated by a totally new character that hasn't been in the book so far. And there's a character called the Citizen who appears in no other Joycean book, as far as I know. And so it's really interesting, and it just has like a whole different tone. There's definitely styles, and I can get there's long lists of absurd and yeah. How long does this yeah, it goes on for this chapter goes on pretty long for 40 pages with all the list and the exaggeration. So let's read a little bit of it first. Okay, let's see. Are we recording? Okay, we're recording this time. I was just passing the time of day with the old Troy of the DMP at the corner of Arbor Hill there, and be damned, but a bloody sweep came along, and he near drove his gear into my eye. I turned around to let him have the weight of my tongue, when who should I see dodging along stony batter? Only Joe Hines. "Lo, Joe," says I, "how are you blowing? Did you see that bloody chimney sweep near shove my eye out with his brush?" "Such luck," says Joe. "Who's the old bollock you're talking to?" "Old Troy," says I, "was in the forest. I'm on two minds not to give that fellow in charge for obstructing the thoroughfare with his brooms and ladders." "What are you doing round these parts?" says Joe. "Devil a much," says I. "There's a bloody big foxy thief beyond the garrison church at the corner of Chicken Lane. Old Troy was just giving me a wrinkle about him. Lifted any god's quantity of tea and sugar to pay there 3 bob a week. Said he had a farm in the country down off Hop of my thumb by name of Moses Herzog over there near Hetz, Hetzbury Street." "Circumcised," says Joe. "Aye," says I, "a bit off the top. An old plumber named Gagari. I'm hanging on to his taw now for the past fortnight. I can't get a penny out of him." "That the lay you're on now?" says Joe. "Aye," says I. How are the mighty fallen? How are the mighty fallen? Collector of bad and doubtful debts, but that's the most notorious bloody robber you meet in a day's walk, and the face on him, all pockmarks, would hold a shower of rain. "Tell him," says he, "I dare him," says he, "and I double dare him to send you round here again, or if he does," says he, "I'll have him summed up before the court. So I will, for trading without a license." And he, after suffering himself till he's fit to burst. Jesus, I had to laugh at the little Jewy getting his shirt out. He drink my he drink me my teas, he eat me my sugars, because he no pay me my monies for the non-perishable goods bought of Moses Herzog of 13 Kevin's Parade in the city of Dublin, Woodquay Ward merchant here and after called the vendor, and sold and delivered to Michael E. Gagardi, Esquire of 29 Arbor Hill in the city of Dublin. Iran Quay War, gentlemen, here and after called the purchaser, uh, Vi Delicit, £5 avoirdupois of first choice tea at 3 shillings and no pence per pound avoirdupois, and 3 stone avoirdupois of sugar crushed crystal at 3 pence per pound avoirdupois. Said the purchaser debtor to the said vendor of £1, 5 shillings and sixpence sterling for value received, which amount shall be paid by said purchaser to said vendor in weekly installments, even 7 calendar days of 3 shillings and no pence sterling. And the said perishable goods shall not be pawned or pledged or sold or otherwise alienated by the said purchaser, but shall be remain and be held to the soul of the exclusive property of said vendor, to be deposed of his good will and pleasure until the said moment. the said amount shall had been duly paid by the said purchaser to the said vendor in the manner herein set forth, as is they hereby agree between the said vendor, his heir, successor, trustees, and assigns for of the one part, and the said purchaser, his heirs, successors, trustees, and assigns of the other part. Yeah, so it's kind of like that's like a crazy chapter there. Start here. Okay, so an unnamed first person narrator describes the events of the afternoon. In addition, the first person narration, the episode contains over 30 passages in prose that parody through hyperbole Irish mythology, legal jargon, journalism, and the Bible, amongst other things. The narrator meets Joe Hines on the street. They get a drink at Barney Kiernan's pub. Alf Bergen enters, laughing at Dennis Breen, who's walking outside with his wife. Bergen tells the story of Breen's UP up postcard and orders a Guinness. The citizen, uh, this guy, there's a character named the Citizen who notices Bloom pacing outside and wonders with hostility what he is doing. He refers to Bloom as the Freemason. Talk switches to Petty Dignam. They have a seance. Bob Dornan, a character from Dubliners, rails loudly at the cruelty of God to take Dignam away. Bloom enters. He is supposed to meet Martin Cunningham there. Hines tries to buy Bloom a drink, but Bloom politely refuses. The subject of hangings is raised. Bloom is against capital punishment, but the citizen dominates the conversation, recalling hanged Irish nationalists. The narrator watches Bloom and thinks scornfully of Molly. The narrator knows a fair amount about the Blooms thanks to Pisser Burke, who has a connection to them. Bloom is trying to make a fine point about hangings. Hines orders another round. The narrator is bitter that Bloom will not buy a round. Bloom explains that he's meeting Martin Cunningham, and Bloom launches into explanation of insurance complexity. There's a lot of drinking in this one, but especially these couple chapters in the middle here from not in the library, but the ones afterwards. They all seem to. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of in the middle of the day. People are checking out the pubs. The men briefly discuss Nanetti, who is running for mayor, and the citizen denounces Nanetti for his Italian origins. The conversation switches to sports, and they talk about the Gaelic sports revival. Uh, they talk about a boxing match. Bloom talks about lawn tennis. A sports journalese passage describes an English Irish boxing match. J. Joe O'Malloy and Ned Lambert enter. The conversation switches to Dennis Breen's madness. Bloom ponders Mrs. Breen's suffering. No one else is sympathetic. John Wise, Nolan, and Lanahan enter. Lanahan tells the narrator about the Gold Cup race, throwaway, an outside horse won. Lanahan, Boylan and Boylan's lady friend lost money on Scepter. The citizen continues declaring the exploitation of Ireland. He longs for a day when Ireland can respond to the wrongs England has committed against it with force. Bloom contends that persecution perpetuates nationalistic hatred. Sound familiar? Nolan and the citizen quiz Bloom about his own nationality. He claims to be Irish nationality by birth and with a Jewish allegiance. Nolan suggests that the Jews have not properly stood up for themselves. Bloom responds that love and life are better options than force and hatred. And Bloom leaves to find Cunningham. And the citizen ridicules Bloom on his call for love. Lanahan tells everyone Bloom probably went to cash in on his throwaway bet from chapter 5, which didn't happen. The narrator visits the outhouse, thinking disparagingly about Bloom's stinginess. He returns inside to find everyone gossiping about Bloom. Of course, nobody buys. He talks about Bloom not buying anybody a drink, but of course he nobody. The same guy is like not buying anybody else a drink. Bloom re-enters the pub and finds Cunningham has arrived. Cunningham, sensing the room is turning belligerent, escorts Bloom, Power, and Crofton out to their car. The citizen follows, yelling jibes about Bloom's Jewishness. The narrator is disgusted with the citizen for making a scene. Bloom, held back by Power, lists off famous Jews, including finally Christ. The citizen grabs a biscuit tin and throws it at him at the car. A long passage provides an exaggerated description of the impact of the tin. A biblical passage describes Bloom as Elijah in the chariot ascending into heaven. So with chapter 12, it corresponds to the chapter in which Odysseus and the men are trapped in the cave of the Cyclops, a one-eyed monster. The Cyclops seems to be represented both by the narrator and the citizen. It's like two different people. Before I thought it was like one guy, but it's actually there's a narrator and there's a character named the citizen, and both of them they only show up in this chapter. Like they're not in the other Joyce books. It's kind of weird. And Bloom remains distinctly two-eyed, able to consider more than one side of an issue, and he's always trying to he's the great compromiser. Bloom's ability to moderate in the face of the citizens' excessiveness is part of what makes him a target for the men in this episode. Bloom stands out in several ways. He doesn't drink, and he's not standing drinks or having drinks bought for him. He's part of the bar conversation, but he's not really part of the thing. And Cyclops represents the climax of all the public chapters of Ulysses, all the tensions that have been building around Bloom and other social episodes come to a head here. Also, for the first time, we don't not get any interior monologue either from Stephen or Bloom. Instead of our usual third person narrator, a first person, an unnamed narrator gives a biased views of events at Barney Kiernan's pub with his own satirical commentary. In addition to the narrator's first person commentaries, 32 interspersed passages of inflated prose recall a variety of styles. These interpolations are unique so far in Ulysses because they seem to be changing the mood, the setting of the episode. They depart from Barney Kiernan's to describe scenes as diverse as a court trial, a parliamentary session, a public hanging. They give us a sense of what is to come in the novel, specifically the dreamlike episode of chapter 15. Though the styles and the settings of the 32 passages differ, they're similar in their hyperbolic quality. That's why I didn't read. I mean, I did read that one paragraph. And the citizen represents a particular kind of Irish nationalism that based itself on the idea of racial purity. The citizens, us versus them logic allows him to sustain his single-minded, one-eyed personal and nationalistic mission. Let's see. The symbolism of episode 12 increasingly uses Christian imagery to depicts Bloom as a Christ-like figure, as others seek to crucify Bloom or sacrifice him as a scapegoat. These analogies further suggest an underdog figure victorious in the end. This representation connects them with the symbolism of the Gold Cup horse race, in which Throwaway, the underdog horse that Bloom supposedly bet on, comes from behind to win the race against Scepter, the horse in which Lenihan and Boylan have bet. Because Bloom is distanced from Scepter, the phallic and violent connotations of the horse's name reinforce his position as a non-violent, effeminate, self-sacrificing outsider. So, yeah, we have one of these chapters. It's really weird. Um, this is kind of a weird chapter. It goes on for 40 pages. It's a little long for some of the Ulysses. It's a little trying. A lot of people get to this point, and if they I mean, I think the first time I read this book, I didn't really understand what was going on. And then we have Nausicaa, which Bloom is out on the beach watching fireworks and stuff. So it's getting later in the night and an afternoon, maybe midday by then. But yeah, this is a real interesting chapter. I hope you like it. So the chapter, where are we at here? Where's my okay? So chapter. Okay, so that started at 240, and we're up to right there. Okay, 284. 284, and we still have like you know 400 pages left of the book. It's very long and stuff, and so we only have uh 6 more chapters, but some of the longest chapters yet, including the 15th. Okay, so that's pretty much it. James Joyce, and we'll see you on the next chapter.